Hello and welcome to the Meaning Project podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Daniel A. Franz. As always, thank you for allowing me to bring a little bit of mental health and meaning to your day. I hope this is meaningful. I don't know. I have some rambling to do today, and hopefully it turns into a meaningful podcast. Um, Two things on my mind that I wanted to share with you. First, excuse me, let's talk about ketamine. Um, As I've shared recently, I have been engaged in a very intensive study for psychedelic-assisted therapy, and ketamine is part of that, as is MDMA and psilocybin. Although in my studies, we really do focus on ketamine and psilocybin. So this is very top of mind for me, and I know it isn't for everybody. Some people, when they hear the idea of psychedelic assisted therapy, are turned off. And so maybe some history into that would be helpful before I dive into the specific substance. But um, this kind of therapy in different forms has been going on literally for thousands of years. We can think of the shamans and medicine men and women of different indigenous tribes and ancient civilizations that have used native plants, native substances, native foods like mushrooms for their healing effects. And it's only been in the past 50 or maybe 100 years that many of these substances like psilocybin and mushrooms and ayahuasca and mescaline have been outlawed in the United States. And when the US did it, other countries did. But now a lot of that is turning around. We see many European countries allowing some of these native plants, substances to be used as medicines again. And that's a lot of what my studies have been about. I had the opportunity this past week in class to observe a group psilocybin session and to observe the research and the healing that goes on in some of these situations. Conversely, and interestingly, in my men's substance abuse group this weekend, or this past week, sorry, um, we talked about maybe using too many mushrooms and ketamine in combination at a concert. I can't remember what concert it was, somebody's concert. Um, and for that person who obviously has had a substance abuse problem, that was definitely problematic. The difference between using these substances in a medicinal therapeutic setting is quite different in some ways than indulging at a music concert. But that's often the reaction when talking about the healing potential of these different medicines. Psychedelia, has really not done well for itself over the past 50 years. Thanks to the policies of Richard Nixon, they were outlawed, and therefore those that used them were outlaws. And, we looked down upon them with Ronald Reagan's war on drugs, um, and the subsequent years of fighting that war. And don't get me wrong, some of these indigenous substances, cocaine, for example, are just inherently bad for you. I had a conversation recently this week about kratom, which is a native plant to somewhere in Asia that is now manufactured and sold in gas stations as an energizing supplement. Unfortunately, it's highly addictive. It works on we think it works on the opioid receptors, and it's just not good for you. On the other hand, some of these substances can be good for you. They can elicit mystical experiences. And darn it, I forgot to pull up the page. We'll talk about mystical experiences. I do want to share that with you because there's a science to that. The idea of mystical experiences and their healing potential. was actually studied by William James over 100 years ago. So as I'm learning more about these opportunities and their healing potential, I have to be honest with you. I am diving all in, um, and for several reasons. If you've listened for a while, if you know me professionally, even personally, you know of my frustrations with modern psychotropic medicines. Quite honestly, I think they're garbage. I don't think they work. Don't get me wrong. Some people definitely require antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications. In my opinion, as you've heard me say, you may not be as depressed or as anxious as you think you are. You might just be dealing with the existential crisis, the existential vacuum that is modern life. And there are better ways to deal with it than numbing yourself out with a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, right? We know those medicines impact the serotonergic system. There's serotonin, a neurotransmitter in your brain, um, and we think that's helpful. I would argue sometimes there are far better things that are more helpful for the malaise of modern existence. However, what I am witnessing in my studies and in reaching out to other practitioners, because right now I'm going to focus on ketamine today, because that's part of the studies and a big part of what I'm reaching out and talking about. Um, it sounds, man, I don't want to overdo this, but it sounds damn near miraculous, right? And there's a reason for that. And I had to go, I had to do some of my own individual research because we're not there in class yet why it seems so miraculous, right? Ketamine is a anesthetic. If you've ever had any kind of major surgery, there's a good chance ketamine may have been used to help you, how do we say, go under, to sleep through the process, procedure, the surgery. Um, but we have found out that in different dosages, it has a profound healing effect. Now, my first time coming into contact with this, um, I remember in my early years as a substance abuse professional, ketamine, K, special K, was a street drug, right? People would get it in, illegally, and they would use it for the high, for the buzz. Um, but then maybe 8 or 10 years ago, it started to undergo clinical trials for hard to treat depression. And I had a young client, young female, probably 14, 15, maybe 16 at that point, um, whose family had personal friendship with somebody administering these trials. So this young lady had to travel several states away, 8 or 10 hours, to become part of the ketamine trials. And and what I witnessed as her therapist was quite profound. This was a young person who was definitely struggling with clinical depression in a way that did seem that it was that colloquial, that anecdotal description of, how do we used to say it, a chemical imbalance of the brain. That's what depression was thought to be. That's quite a simplification, but also, I mean, the struggles of coming from a divorced family where her father lived quite far away, and the difficulties of high school. She was dealing with all of that. Ketamine helped. I was worried about this young person for quite a while. There were some suicidal ideations. Um, she had some profound issues, struggles to go to school, to perform in school. And after just a few of these treatments, again, traveling far away, just a few of these treatments, um, wow, there was a profound impact. Different than when she was on a different, I know in my time with her prior to this, there were different antidepressants and SSRIs and SNRIs that didn't work, but this did. And then just recently, interestingly, it was another young lady who I started working with in high school. Um, Profound depression, suicidal ideation, struggles, excuse me, struggles in her family, struggles in school. Who now that ketamine is legal, or is medicinally used more, she went to a local clinic and received ketamine infusions and then ketamine nasally, and is doing a lot better. Is still prone to some of these episodes, but does not have to be on regular medication. So, what is it? Ketamine now is believed to be helpful in hard to treat depression, suicidal ideation, PTSD, obsessive compulsive disorder, um, postpartum depression, anxiety. Why? Why is this a cure all? What is it about this substance? Well, our traditional antidepressants work on your neurotransmitter serotonin, right? So we hear a lot about serotonin in just common media. We know that when it hangs out in the brain for a little bit of neurobiology and chemistry here. Um, Serotonin passes messages through the synapses in your brain. When it hangs out in the brain a little bit longer, right? When it is inhibited from the reuptake process, that's the let's see, subtle serotonin reuptake inhibitor, right? So this these chemicals, these antidepressants prevent serotonin from being reabsorbed and put into storage. So it hangs out in your brain a little longer. And we believe that produces that kind of antidepressant effect. What many people tell me is it's not so much an elevation of mood, but a numbing out of the sadness that they feel. And we've thought of that to be helpful for a long time, right? But many people will tell you their time on antidepressants is a numbing time. It's better than feeling low all the time, right? The depressive episode, feeling low. However, it's not it's not a normal facet of life, right? Being numb for a duration just isn't healthy. And so that's why in my practice I like to see people come off of antidepressants over time. Ketamine's different. Ketamine impacts the glutamate system in the brain, the glutamate neurotransmitter, which is a more abundant neurotransmitter in the brain. And so it impacts glutamate in a positive way. I'm going to kind of read the mechanism, right? So, unlike traditional antidepressants, ketamine has a broader impact on neurotransmitter transmission. It specifically targets glutamate, the brain's most abundant transmitter, and enhances the production of glutamate. So you actually get more of this neurotransmitter in a positive way by promoting and developing stronger connections between brain cells. This is the important thing. What ketamine is doing, and psilocybin in some ways, what the research is telling us is it promotes neuroplasticity. Do you remember back, some of you of a similar age may remember the 1980s war on drug commercial. It was a very simple one. It was an egg in a frying pan and it was just sizzling. And it said, "This is your brain on drugs," right? And it was meant to scare us away from using illicit substances. And then we were also taught that, when you use these substances, you are killing brain cells, right? You are killing off parts of your brain. Well, that's not necessarily true. Sometimes parts of your brain, don't take this the wrong way, but sometimes those parts we don't use need to be sloughed off, need to be trimmed. We need to grow our brain in different directions. And that's part of what ketamine does. It increases this neuroplasticity, it increases brain connection and growth. I'm look, I am not a neurophysiologist. I'm giving you this in simple terms, so I hope you understand. We can always, you're welcome to contact me to discuss it. But what research is telling us? This is so impressive for me. Excuse me, why? Take a sip of coffee. The statistic that sticks in my head that I'll have to go back to my courses and find out what course it was in did come from a neurophysiologist um, who said psilocybin is increasing neuroplasticity for up to 2 weeks after dosing. Ketamine increases neuroplasticity for up to a week after dosing. Um, and there's a critical period of about 72 hours after ketamine to engage in really positive work that has a lasting impact. Um, right now, many medical providers, nurses, advanced practice nurses, nurse practitioners, and MDs are administering ketamine in a way where people go in, they will get an infusion, and they are left alone in a quiet room for an hour during this infusion so the substance takes effect, and then they go home, and it has positive effects there, right? Just a simple go in, take the medicine, and go home. I was actually I did a telehealth session with a client, one of the young ladies I mentioned previously. um, I said, you know what, you're going to go take your ketamine, let's have a session during that time. And I witnessed what goes on. And I don't know, I was kind of horrified for her based on my training, right? This was still what she received was still a better treatment than taking Paxil every day, right? So she went in because she had had previous treatment. She didn't have an infusion. She had a nasal mist, the S-ketamine. Um, and then she sat, oh, this is so sad. She sat in a dark room with a TV with Netflix. Fortunately, that was one of the times we chatted. And it was, I'll tell you, it was an interesting chat. I could tell she was altered, but she was also more open to suggestion, positive, therapeutic suggestion. So what I'm learning and being trained in and being certified in is how to conduct therapy during this time, right? So during the hour of an infusion or after a nasal administration, or even more so after a intramuscular injection, how to conduct therapy while the brain is processing this glutamate and processing these changes. As importantly, right? So I'll be honest, there isn't a lot of talk therapy going on while somebody is under the influence of these substances, but there is a process of sitting and note taking and paying attention to the experience, and in a way guiding the experience in a therapeutic way. But the really important work happens after the administration, after the substance has been processed, and the brain is again more open to positive suggestion. That neuroplasticity, that ability to grow and connect and make new neural connections, is increased for especially the hours after dosing and the 72 hours following. And that's where really positive and powerful therapy can take place. And that's what I'm really excited about. Um, the potential, one of the things I'm specifically excited about is the potential for couples. I have worked with so many couples that just simply reach an impasse, cannot find a way to agree or to agree to disagree. And the toil that takes on a marriage as a therapist is hard to witness, is hard to watch. But the idea that ketamine can open up some of these pathways in a way to increase connectivity between two people. I'm really excited. The research is profound about the positive impacts here. And so I'm partnering with a local practitioner to begin to offer this ketamine assisted therapy. Many of the therapists in my area are referring their clients to this practitioner, but not participating in it, working with the client later. I want to do the ketamine assisted therapy live and with people present there. Um, I don't want to give this possibility too much power, too much positivity, but I can't help but think it's going to be groundbreaking. That as people engage in this, um, it can be transformative. I am very hopeful, and maybe that's because I've been a practitioner for damn near 25 years now, and I've seen some of these hard to treat situations, and not just hard to. It's silly to think sometimes hard to treat depression is easier to stomach than some of these other hard to treat situations. Again, couples that have been wrapped in the same pattern of discord for a decade or more. That's hard to see. Um, you know, even when good therapy happens and they get better, sometimes these patterns come back. What if ketamine can change that? What if increasing neuroplasticity and connectivity can grow pathways in more positive directions for a couple or for an individual, right? Maybe it's not hard to treat depression. Maybe it's being stuck in this pattern of addiction, of meaninglessness. There's another area where ketamine is the research is saying is going to have a positive, can have, has had a positive effect on alcoholism, on substance abuse. I just kind of go in a different direction real quick. My studies right now are really focused on the positives of psilocybin research. And I read a report this week, 3 case studies of individuals who had chronic alcohol use and abuse for a long period of time. Stopped after one person. It took 1 dose of psilocybin. Others were offered as part of the research study 3 doses of psilocybin, and I think the study went 4 or 5 years out, 48 and 60 months later. We're still abstinent from alcohol use. It was profound. And I get frustrated. I can't believe we haven't been able to use these for the past 50 years. But that's politics. That's life in our world today. And I can go down the conspiratorial route and say, well, big pharma has had their pockets in politicians for a long time because can you imagine? I don't know what the percentage is right now. The amount of people we all know, multiple people on antidepressant medication, daily pills to feel better. That is a huge profit for a lot of companies. And they might be scared. Some of these substances, excuse me, can help people. Again, the case study I read, 1 dose of psilocybin, and this individual was off alcohol for 5 years. Are you freaking kidding me? If I was the president of Lilly or Pfizer or Bayer, I'd be terrified. I'd also be trying to stick my hands in it too. And that's happening as certain places are trying to patent these different compounds and chemicals that have been occurring naturally in nature for thousands of years. So it's an interesting time. I come to you today talking about ketamine because again, that's where my studies are, and that my academic studies are focused on that right now, but also my practice studies. I want to be able to offer this, but right now, I'll be honest, it's expensive. Um, because we need to administer the chemical, and you know if you've ever been um, had surgery and you've seen your anesthesiology bill, these things are not inexpensive. So a dosing of ketamine can cost a couple $100. And then there's the therapist time of sitting with you through the dosing. And then afterwards, right? So that's not always billable to insurance. Future sessions might be able to. So in administration, I'm seeing, several $100s. Now we haven't quite getting close to maybe a ketamine session or a psilocybin session being near $1,000, but trying to bring that down a little bit more. Um, but I can't help but think if you could do that once, the person I'm working with, the clinic I'm partnering with, recommends a dosing of 6 times over 3 weeks, I think it is, so maybe twice a week, and then maintenance as needed. Many people don't need maintenance, but once a year. Um, isn't that you'd have to do the cost analysis? Isn't that more effective than taking a $5 or $10 or $20? I don't know how much SSRIs cost these days, but if you're taking it daily, there's a big difference there. I don't know. It should have some interesting impact. So keep listening. Um, Please hop on over and subscribe to my weekly Monday mental health and meaning update because, as I said, I wrote about this a couple weeks ago when I wasn't able to podcast. So subscribe to that newsletter, and you'll catch occasionally different weekly updates if I'm not recording a podcast, or sometimes there's just different things to write about. But pay attention to see this. I hope to be offering this soon. I hope to have a plan put together, and I'm doing the research to put pricing together to offer it next week. Um, okay, that's a little soon. I'll actually be out of office in coming weeks, but by the end of the month, let's say that. So check the updates. Um, Keep listening to the podcast, and yeah, I'm going to be offering ketamine assisted therapy here soon in a location near me, maybe even other locations. You'll also have an opportunity. Um, I'm going to have my own experience to report, right? This is kind of groundbreaking territory, and I want to be able to share my own perspective as I encourage you to engage in it. As you can see behind me, there's a Neo and his anti-hero, and I really believe this red pill blue pill theory from the Matrix of 20 years ago. Like, does this opportunity to engage in the red pill, I forget which one it is, open up new possibilities for us? I want to find out. um, you'll hear more from me as I try to navigate the legalities of psilocybin. Um, Again, part of my training is to undergo my own experience. That will happen next year. But again, thousands of years we've been using these things, or we haven't because it's been illegal. Different indigenous cultures have, with profound effects, better effects than SSRIs. Is this, I'm not even going to ask. I believe this is a positive opportunity for the future. Because the other thing that's been weighing on me after my meeting yesterday with the clinic I'm partnering with for ketamine, I've been getting some opportunities to relocate. Opportunities, please come work in our office. Our community needs help. And, you know, one of my partners in my current office reminded me, he said, Dan, a wise person once told me it doesn't make sense to have multiple offices uh, because, right, we only get to do our work on an hour by hour basis. So if I go work in a community an hour away, that's just simply time I'm not helping the community where my office currently is. And this really, again, is weighing heavy on my heart. and I've said this before, and I'm honestly asking you today. I want you to come back with feedback. How do we help more people in bigger ways? That's why I started this podcast years ago, to get these ideas out there. And I think it helps. But sometimes, well, I don't know. Sometimes listening to a podcast can be transformative. How do we keep that going? How do I keep that going? One way I've been thinking about, and I'll probably do here soon, is to try to digitize some of this information I have and put it on a website for people to engage in, and then offer groups around it. Um, I've talked about my men's substance abuse group for a while now. Man, I love doing that. Now, I'll be honest, a couple weeks ago, I was telling some of the gentlemen, I'm like, man, this takes a lot of time. I think I think maybe we need to take a break for a while. And I literally had a mutiny. They're like, please don't do that. Um, they were telling me that it's beneficial. I grew up clinically, in my early years, running. That's what I did every day. Ran groups for adolescents and their parents and then their families. I mean, every Friday night we would have a multi-family group, sometimes 20, 30. I think the biggest one was over 60 people. That wasn't very therapeutic. It was more of a presentation. It's hard to do therapy in groups bigger than, I don't know, 12 or 15 people. It's possible. Is that something that we need more of right now? Rather than me, don't get me wrong, I still want to spend time in my office one on one with people. That's helpful for them and meaningful for me. But are we in a time where, sharing this message in different ways and working with groups of people is a better idea? That's what I'm thinking about, right? That's what's on my mind lately. And I just put that out to you. Is that something you want? Is that something you need as a listener to this podcast, as somebody who maybe knows me a little bit through the podcast by now or has worked with me? Is that an opportunity to work in different ways? Oh, here's an idea. Is a mental health and meaning group with videos or lectures to consume, to engage in, followed by a psychedelic assisted therapy retreat. Oh wow. I kind of like that idea, right? Running a preparation group, working through intentions and how to grow from this, and then getting together somewhere. It could be here, it could be at the clinic I'm working with in a nearby city, or it could be, ooh, we could go somewhere where these other natural medicines are legal. You want to meet up in Colorado or Oregon? I love Colorado, so I'd go there for any reason. Yeah. How can I help more people in bigger ways? That weighs on me today. Uh, Maybe you can help me with it. Email me. Find me at danielafranz.com. That's DANIELAFRANZ.com. Tell me what you think. I want to know. I want to help people in bigger and better ways. I want to help more people. I would like you to subscribe to the newsletter there, because I'll be sending out updates as to what's coming up, how I'm going to be doing this, and what the nature of my practice looks like in the future. So I would like to work with you. I'd like you to tell me what it is you might need. You've hopefully listened to 160 some episodes of this podcast. You know where my passions to help lie. Maybe I have some blind spots that I'm not seeing that you can help me with. So please feel free to email me, call, reach out, comment on the podcast. As always, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for this opportunity to bring a little bit of mental health and meaning to your day. Take care.